and welcome to this episode of the Carlyle podcast. Now, when it comes to podcast guests, I simply believe that those that have been there and done it are those that make for the best content and the best conversations. And the man joining me today certainly has. He has been involved in radio with Radio City. He has hosted TV programs with Granada and ITV, and he has also anchored the 1988 Olympics, which is a huge achievement. So, Elton Welsby, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
It's a pleasure. Doing fine, thanks. Yeah. Lockdown is treating me quite well, really.
Good. I'm very glad to hear. It's a pleasure to be speaking to somebody, not only someone from Merseyside who's done so well within sports broadcasting, but an Evertonian as well. That's always a bonus.
Oh, I'm glad we got that out of the way. I thought I was going to have to say, "Oh, don't you start."
No, but to start as well, and I thought this is really interesting. Doing my research prior to having you on the show, I would advise anybody, by the way, to go back and watch the likes of Match Night and Match Time for the origins of football TV shows. I thought they are absolutely fantastic, and dare I say it, a lot better than some of the things that we see today. But to start, something that really I found interesting was I read in an article that for one of your first newspaper features, which focused on the lives of football managers, that you managed to get Bill Shankly on as your first guest, which as a modern equivalent.
I spent the day with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, as a modern equivalent today, I could only think of that being like getting Jurgen Klopp on one of your first episodes of your podcast. Like, I'm sure that's huge for you earlier on in your career.
Klopp or Mourinho, I think they would be today's equivalent, if you like. Yes, yes, it was fantastic. I'll tell you how it happened. Actually, it was quite amusing. I wrote an article in the Liverpool Weekly News where I'd had a tip that Liverpool were interested in Clyde Best, the West Ham striker at the time, who was scoring a few goals for West Ham. So I did a piece, and the headline was Liverpool. It was something like Black Bomber Best, something along those lines. Not intended to be racist at all. That was okay in those days. And blimey, I got in the morning. The paper was published on a Thursday. It went on sale on Thursdays, and I got in. We get in late on a Thursday, and then have a look at the paper, see how it looks. And there's a phone call. One of the guys in the office said, it's Bill Shankly for you. And I went, oh, sure, yeah. This is a little regional newspaper. I'm saying, yeah, okay, yeah. He said, no, I think it is. It's either him or a very good impressionist. So I came on and said, hello. Did you write that article about Clyde Best? I said, yes, I did, Mr. Shankly. He said, it's a load of baloney. Guys, you're a newspaper man. You should have rang me and asked me, and I'd have told you straight. I said, well, I'm awfully sorry. Next week's edition, we'll print a little apology that we were wide of the mark on that. I said, listen, we do a feature day in the life of. Would you be willing to be a participant in that? And maybe it would teach me a little bit more, because I was only a kid, And he said, that's fine. Tomorrow. And I'm thinking, well, Friday. Yeah. Yes, fine. I see you at Melwood at 9:00. Went from there.
And the rest is history.
Spent the whole day. Spent the day at Melwood. Went to Anfield. After that, sat in his office with him. It was fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
I'm sure it was. How old were you when that happened?
Oh God, 22.
Wow, that's around my age. That would have been absolutely huge.
Yeah, about 22. Oh, I couldn't believe it. I had to pinch myself, you know.
Yeah,
But
like
of course, I got to know him properly and well in 1974 when Radio City started, and he did a chat show for Radio City. It used to go out, I think it was between 1 and 2 on a Saturday afternoon. We'd record it, say, on the Friday, or sometimes on the Saturday morning, but it would go out between 1 and 2, you know, so people could listen in the cars going to the match. And his very first guest, and Wally Scott was the producer of that. I was sort of co-producer, if you like, assistant producer. And Shanks' first guest, when he was Prime Minister, was Harold Wilson.
wow.
It's I don't know whether the tape's still around, but it's pure broadcasting gold. You know, no other way of putting it. It's just priceless. He said, Harold, who was the first ever socialist? And Harold Wilson sort of with his pipe, and is it Ramsay MacDonald, Bill? He said, no, Jesus Christ. Stuff like that. It's absolutely brilliant. Great guy. Went down. I did a few of the programs to give Wally a break, really, because it was working with him in that kind of environment was enlightening, to say the least. But I also went down when Bob got his first Manager of the Year award down in London, one of the big hotels in London. And Shanks was like surprise guest to present it to him. Bob Paisley, I'm talking about, obviously. And he said to me, are you going, you know, to the awards tomorrow in London? I said, I am actually, Bill. Yeah, I'll be down there to interview Bob and a few people. And he said, right, I'll see you on the train at 8 o'clock. First class compartment, and we'll drink tea all the way there. And it happened. Wow. It was just marvelous.
Seems like it. And what I wanted to ask is,
yeah.
Now, I'm very lucky. Obviously, there's plenty of people around here who have families that are split down the middle. Some support the red side, some support the blue side. I was very lucky in that both sides of my family are match-going Evertonians. My granddad, who I was incredibly close with, played for Everton in the 1950s and was good friends with Dave Hickson and Tony McNamara and players around that era. And I was reading Jurgen Klopp's letter to the Liverpool Echo, and I'm familiar with Jurgen Klopp. I followed his Dortmund side very closely, and as you say, similar to Shankly, he does seem like someone who speaks to those socialist values and somebody that really understands the cultural significance of football to its people. What do you think he is?
I've never met him, and I would love to. I think he's. I mean, you talk about the spirit of Shankly, etc. I don't know. In the years to come, you could see the spirit of Klopp merging.
Unfortunately for us, but
very unfortunately, yeah, the spirits of Carlo, maybe.
Hopefully in a couple of years.
Spirits of Big Dunk.
What do you think it is that makes football so unique around this part of the world? It's more than just a hobby. It's more than just a pastime.
What do I think? Well, I as I say, I grew up watching football. But the first time I went to Everton was in 1962, April the 21st, I think it was, 1962, and they were playing Cardiff and won 8-3. and he scored one, but the guy who just ran the game and made me fall in love with not football, I was in love with that before then, but what made me fall in love with Everton was Alex Young. And it was, I'll never forget that performance. It was fantastic. Taffy Vernon got 3. Billy Bingham was on the score sheet, for goodness sake. And Jimmy Gabriel, I believe. And I think Youngie got the 1, but he must have created the other 7. You know? He was just fantastic. So that was my first memory. And as regarding the fans at the time and what have you, I don't remember any of the, if you like, bitterness that seems to be prevalent now, especially, you know, following the events of Friday night. It was fine. I mean, yeah, like you say, you know, Liverpool and Everton fans, I go on the bus. Actually, we used to go on the bus occasionally with Bill Kenwright, and we used to go into the paddock. And we go on the bus, and there'd be Liverpool fans on the bus. No problem at all. No problem at all. The only part I never went, because I was advised against it, was the Boys' Pen. That was meant to be a paradise for hooligans, basically. Stab you, we on you. You know. But I never saw it firsthand, so I'm not casting too many aspersions in that direction.
Football certainly has changed in that time, and
oh gosh, yeah.
You're telling me the Project Restart, as it's being called now, obviously English football is well and truly back underway after, I suppose now you can call it the pandemic era. I feel
we're
like
still in it.
Yeah,
we're still in the pandemic era. Make no mistake about that.
No, I think we'll be in it for years to come, to be fair. And
yes.
football seems like one of those industries that always has opportunities to reinvent itself or repackage itself. I'm sure you'll know more than you'll know more than most, given your involvement with broadcast media and whatnot. So, what are your opinions and what have you made of what's transpired following the restart of football?
Well, the behind closed doors, that's the obvious thing, isn't it? I'm not. If you watch on the television, you've got the option of having crowd noise, which they inject into the coverage, or you can just hear it as it is if you were in the stadium. You know, virtually no sound at all, apart from the commentator. I think it favours the away sides at the moment because they're not used to being cheered and, you know, on foreign soil, whereas the home teams are really used to it. You know, like at Goodison, we know what that's like when the fans get behind the lads. It just, and a lot of the results, and this certainly applies to the Bundesliga, it favoured the away sides. So I think that's interesting. Having said that, you know, I have to say, I think Liverpool have been magnificent. I think they deserve the Premier League. I hope in the years to come it's not tarnished by, oh, well, that's the coronavirus league, isn't it? You know, they deserve it. I mean, to win by a massive haul of points. I can see you grimacing as well, but I'm a realist, you see. And also, you know, during my time, not just at the Weekly News, but certainly Radio City, you know, I wouldn't have had the career I had and saw some of the wonderful things that I did if it hadn't been for Liverpool, you know. Because I commentated on all their games between 74 and 78. You know, when they were winning the league, the European Cup, you know, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, no, I didn't. The European Cup, I did one European Cup, that was 77. And 2 UEFA Cups.
So I'm not a bitter blue. Not.
No. I suppose because this is the career that I have my heart set on. I've had to vanquish any sort of bitterness. Really, as you say, they do thoroughly deserve it this season. This is, believe it or not, I'm 21 years of age. This is the first time in my lifetime that I've experienced them winning the league, obviously, but I would say this is the first time I've ever experienced them truly being the best team in Europe. I know you could go back to last year and 2005 when they won the Champions League, but even then, I wouldn't have quite said that they were the elite of the elite. You've always had Barcelona or Real Madrid and whatnot in terms of their playing styles, but as you say, Elton, credit where it's due. They've been tremendous, and a large part of that is down to Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say that obviously we touched on it there, the impact that certain individuals have on the culture of football. You talked about Paisley and Shankly, Klopp, but you have had the pleasure of interviewing and being in the studio with some people who are just so influential in the development of football over time.
Kind of transcend football in a sense.
Yeah, just to name a few.
I can't name a few because once you name, say, 3 or 4, then the others kind of pale into insignificance in a sense. Now, I'm not dodging your question. Brian Clough, without a shadow of a doubt.
Cloughy is one of them.
Oh, no. Yeah, right. You see, once you said Shankly, Brian Clough, but Bob Paisley wasn't that kind of animal, so I can't class him as that. I still regard him as probably the shrewdest tactician that football's possibly ever known. That's a bit of a sweeping statement, but I don't think too many people would argue with me. But other than that, then you're into the realms of Ron Atkinson, a great character, but not in the same sense as Clough or Shankly.
Mm-hmm.
Different. I'm trying to think desperately of some of the. I'd have to say I'm going to limit it to Shanks. I never worked with Shanks on television. But Clough I did a number of times, and that was you didn't know what was going to happen next. To be honest with you, talking live TV. And you just were living on your wits. I mean, I needed a large scotch or brandy when I finished that show. Just calm down because you were so hyped because you just didn't. Half the time he'd had a good few drinks himself, you just didn't know what to expect with Cloughie. But for me, just top class. What a great advert for football and the character of football. I thought he was terrific. Really did.
I'll name a few that stood out to me from doing my research. Just in terms of, as I say, the cultural development of football. George Best certainly seemed to be one of them in terms of developing.
Oh yeah, sorry, I thought you were referring to managers.
Well, not just managers, because I think as you say, I think it transcends managers, players, and it goes down to the people and the individuals. I'd say Best certainly developed footballers to be mentioned in the same brackets as celebrity. At this point, there was a brief technical mishap, as I believe this was Elton's first ever time for using Skype. The conversation cuts back in with Elton describing his experiences with the legendary Sir Bobby Robson.
He was always an absolute. I love the time I spent with him. I met him at Tranmere once in the boardroom. Anyway, I went up and Elton Welsby. been a while. Oh, so it has. We had a brief chat. And next minute, he walks off. Strange. Not like him at all, you know. And so I just called him and said, "You all right, Bob?" He left a bit quick there. And he said, "No," he said, "it's been bothering me. I'm just trying to remember the last time we met." He was deadly serious. Of course, he was studio guest in the game at Anfield when Arsenal
The Arsenal game, yeah.
So that was probably the greatest memory we have. Obviously, Italian 90. I apart from doing the odd interview down the line, as it's called, I never sort of came across in person the England team or Bob or anybody, because we were always on the road traveling to various locations, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Never got to see the England training camp at all.
No, bit closed off. That's the type of sort of manager that he was in terms of his access with the media.
Bob?
Yeah.
Oh, he was terrific, and he got a really hard time at one point. Yeah, it was given a really hard time, and by the Sunday papers, as more than anyone else, as I recall, and I met up with him at one point, and he was distraught. He was kind of, why are they treating me like this? I've always been good to them. I said, well, I don't know. I suppose their argument was controversy or whatever you want to call it. Those papers. I'll come up with it, you know, and I don't think he could either.
See, there are things like that I'm set to graduate this year with a degree in sports media, but there are things just like that really set me back from being referred to as a journalist in a sense. It puts me off.
Thinking of going into broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you want to do? This kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. You find you're trusted a lot more than the newspaper guys. And I found that definitely. And it was, I mean, I remember Shanks, we were in the press conference on a Friday lunchtime once with all the Merseyside mafia, you know, they used to call them the Merseyside mafia, all the lads who worked for the Express, the Star, the Sun, Mirror, etc., you know. And there'd been a story, Colin Daily Mail had written a story Shanks didn't like. And so we all got in there and he sort of eyeballed Woody as if to say, I'm going to get you. And all of a sudden he said, I know what you're going to say, son. You don't like the headline. And it was the headline that he liked, you know. So, as I say, the newspaper guys, they're a bit wary because other people, what I'm trying to say is, with the newspaper, other people get involved, you know, sub-editors,
mm-hmm.
editors, etc. Subs, you know, who will say take something out of a story which ruins the context of the story, you know, unbeknown to them. Whereas in radio, yes, of course you can edit, you know, radio and television too, but it's much harder. You can't distort what's being said as easily as you can with the written. So, Max, a word of advice: search for your goal and make it a broadcasting one. Definitely, you're a good-looking lad.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is where I really like podcasts because they seem to be a medium between both radio and television. And as you say, in terms of editing, they're pure. They're not. You can't distort them or warp them in any way. They are very true to its material.
I'm not absolutely sure what a podcast is, to be truthful. How does it? How do you? Where's your audience?
Essentially what I've done is I've built an audience from social media, so through the likes of Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and whatnot. And I've been living in Manchester for the last 3 years, and I found that particularly interesting walking around with this accent. But as I say, it's been fantastic for building connections and networking. And as I say, yeah, I'm set on the broadcasting path, as it were. As someone that worked across the board, newspapers, radio, and television, which did you enjoy the most and feel like you found your voice in the most?
The 4 years I had at Radio City were absolutely fantastic, because we certainly in '74, the start of it, we were pioneers. I mean, no one knew anything about radio who were on the broadcasting side. Obviously, technicians and what did, but we just had to learn and learn very quickly how to do it. I remember we our first midweek sports show on City, which Wally and I put together. It was going out on whatever night, I can't remember, let's say Thursday night. And editing the tapes and putting them together, just putting the tapes together. We worked through the night, literally. We were clueless. And we sat in the studio, and we were live in the studio, but queuing in tapes, and we had a couple of studio guests as well. But all the tapes that needed editing, I tell you, one of them was Steve Coppell. That was my first ever taped interview, was for that program in 1974. And it was with Steve Coppell, and we've been great mates ever since.
Wow. As I say,
television, I can't even compare television then and now. I love the TV because it was really fly by the seat of your pants in those days, because technically it has come on so much. It's almost frightening how it's come on. You know, the audio. I never used auto cue. Now everyone uses it now, and you know, they're called instant rolls. You know, when someone says, and let's hear from so and so, whoever spoke to him earlier, it comes in like that. When I first started out, you had to give a cue or some kind of cue to the PA to roll the tape, the interview, 10 seconds before it actually hit the air, because it had to stabilize on the loop. And then, you know, luxury of all luxuries, it came down to 5 seconds, which was fine. And then we got the option of instant rolls, like they have now. But as it wasn't perfected, I said, no, I don't want that. You know, I want the 5 second roll, because if something's wrong, I've got 5 seconds to work out how to get out of it. Because I had open talkback, I could hear everybody, everything in my ear while I was working. And I just wanted to know if Telecine had a problem, BT had a problem, Sound had a problem, whatever. You know, I like to know, because if on instant rolls, if you just say, oh, and here he is speaking earlier, and nothing happens, you know, you're going, I wonder what happened there. You know, not for me. I like to know. I mean, it's foolproof. You never see that happening anyway. So, yeah, instant rolls now will be fine.
Yeah, as you say, the technology certainly has developed so much, and it's developing every day, really.
Oh yeah, I mean, these, you see like the Sunday supplements on Sky, where they have the three journalists and the presenter. That's on your Zoom thing, isn't it? You know, where four or five people, whatever, can all take part, but from their living rooms. I mean, it's just cracky. When Leeds won the title, and we were doing it, we had a camera in Lee Chapman's house, and he was with Gary McAllister and Eric Cantona.
and we were talking to him from our studio to Lee's house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm told that it was technically so complicated. You know, the engineers who set it up, enabled it to work, were given medals. You know, it was right up to Lee, well done, congratulations, and all that. We had no idea it was going to happen. We didn't have a preview thing, nothing. It was really, Dennis Law told me that. It was, crikey, just, are we going to get him or not? You know, anyway, perfectly. It worked perfectly, and the engineers got all the credit, and rightly so.
Very hit and miss, if you will, back in the days now, as you say, in comparison.
In Italia 90 and the Euros in 92, we were just sort of sat in the basically in the stand. We had a little area which, you know, was our area, but crikey, the things like talkback, we learnt so much from Italia 90 that when we went to Sweden in 92, we, you know, sounds a bit boastful, but we perfected it, and it was sweet. I think Sweden 92 was probably the best presentation of a major football championship that I've ever seen or been part of.
Nicer.
It was terrific, you know, excellent.
I'll certainly go.
That was the first time there was no London studio at all.
Wow.
Everything came from Sweden.
I think
mainly Stockholm or Uterberg, which is how the Swedes say Gothenburg.
Nice.
Me and Jack Charles used to laugh about that. Are we going back to, when are we going back to Uterberg? That's the joke.
Obviously, I think with any sort of change in life, it has its positives and it has its negatives. But I think one of the positives of the evolution of technology is the fact that I can go back and look at all that footage now and learn from it and pick things up from it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a bit long in the tooth, but, you know, I'm still learning. Not that I'm practicing at the moment, but, you know, you still learn. You know, when you watch a broadcast or whatever, you think, that's, you know, ooh, that's good. I like that. That's different. Whatever. Yeah. It's, I'd say the technical side of it now. I mean, I remember sort of, I used to be invited, say we were doing a live game from the studio, which was very rare, but a live game from the studio for Granada. And once you'd thrown over to the commentators, obviously you had 45 minutes, well, slightly longer, you know, to chill out or do whatever. Watch the game, clearly, but you had to do the half time, full time. But you could do it in a relaxed state. And I was often asked the director to say, come up to the gallery. That's not going up there. Why is that? I said, well, I can see all the monitors, all the various things. I mean, it was like Apollo 11, you know. I said, no. If I go up there, I become more acutely aware of all the things that can go wrong that would leave egg on my face. And I don't want to. I do want to look.
I can empathise with that. I 100% agree. At the moment, but
I doubt. What I'm saying is, I doubt whether it would be as scary today. I'm sure it wouldn't.
I think there's still the degree of responsibility there. As I say, with this podcast, as of the moment, it's an independent platform, and I do all the, as I say, the hosting, the producing, and the editing myself. So there is certainly responsibility there to be taken for it. as I was saying, like with newspapers, which I believe you started off in, when did you start to feel like this is going to become a defining career path for yourself?
When I was hired by Radio City, I think I started there 2 weeks before they went on air. The first on air date was October the 21st, 1974. So I'd probably been there from the end of the first week or thereabouts. And they were still building the studios, and you think we're not going to be ready for October the 21st. Anyway, we were. It all worked well. There were some hiccups, obviously, but that was great. Getting back to your question, the previous one, that was the most challenging and probably enjoyable time of my broadcasting career, I would say. Those 4 years at Radio City. That's not to say I didn't enjoy the TV at all. It was, I mean, when I first did the transition from radio to television, it was frightening. It really was. I tried not to show it, but it was. But within a matter of, I wouldn't say weeks, say months. In a matter of months, a television studio became a kind of second home. Everything was familiar, and I'd learned, and I knew the signs of when something wasn't going to go right. I could tell. I knew. So I'd be talking, but I'd be thinking as well what I'm going to do in a minute's time, because something's going to go belly up. But that was wonderful, and it's to make, when things go wrong or something's happened, it's how to get out of it and how to cover it up. If you like, laugh it off. Don't let the audience, the viewers at home, see you panicking and sweating. Yeah, make it funny.
Yeah, good tip, definitely. You mentioned there that what made you fall in love with football was that early 60s Everton side, a side that I grew up hearing many stories of. You say your sort of standout player was Alex Young, whereas for myself, Brian LeBone, I absolutely loved hearing stories about Brian LeBone. Captain, don't think he ever got a red card in his career, and someone who I really felt like epitomised Everton in a sense. And like you talk about Paisley and Shankly as those that epitomise Liverpool, I feel like there are certain individuals that most definitely epitomise Everton and everything they stand for. Catterick and Kendall, obviously, the two standout names. How have you found your career of covering Everton over time?
Well, that was more difficult in some respects than doing Liverpool, because being an Evertonian by that time. Let's see. So the Weekly News, that was late 60s, early 70s. We didn't do a lot with them. I used to go, but I didn't go in the press box, which I could have done during the 1970 championship campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I still went in the ground because I still felt more of a fan than anything else, Who knows in that era. Then there was the fantastic when Howard, and everything went right for Howard and for Everton between 84 and 87. That was great. Always welcome. All the boys knew me and knew as an Evertonian, which is the thing. So, if ever I said, can you do something? Can you come in the studio or anything like that? It was always, yeah, no problem. Because they knew they wouldn't get a hard time.
Brilliant. I came across last night footage from the QPR game where we're crowned league champions, and you're reporting over an absolutely jam-packed Goodison Park, and the atmosphere was absolutely bouncing. What was that like?
That was Monday, wasn't it? Bank holiday Monday, I think.
I believe so. I believe so.
Well, I was doing. I had to do a piece, not in Vision. I was just with a commentator's mic and some headphones. I was doing a scene set for Bank Holiday Sports Special or something like that. A scene set, and it was meant to be about 30 seconds. And something had gone wrong in London, and the only link that they had up and running was mine. So my 30 seconds from Goodison prior to that game turned into about 2.25 minutes. That's a long time in television and radio. 2.25 minutes is a long time. And but I was able to fall back. You know, I was telling stories about when they won the title in 1970, you know, 80, and now we're up to 85, blah, blah, blah. It was a doddle, and people saying, well, how does he know all this? This is fantastic. It's all the producers down in London, you know, but I mean, this is really educational. And someone who knew me very well sort of said, hang on, he's an Evertonian, he's having a field day, which is absolutely true. You know, it was great. You'd have put someone, I don't know, who didn't know the history of Everton as well as I did. It might have been a bit of an arduous task, but it was easy for me. You know, I was reeling off, you know, the players from the 60s, you know, then the players from the 70s, Kendall Ball, Harvey, etc. And Labby, you know, Labby. I felt sorry for Labby in '70 that you know, when the title, when the championship trophy was presented, you know, Labby was injured. Borley was presented with the trophy. You know, I always felt a bit sorry for Labby. That was towards the end for Labby. I don't know. I'm not quite sure how many years he did after that. Of course, he was with England in '70, the World Cup in Mexico. I'm not sure. I don't think. I think. Have you any idea? Because you're a big fan of his. Would he have finished around about '72? Was it something like
early '70s? It was an injury, wasn't it, that ended his career prematurely?
Yeah.
I believe it was an off tackle in a reserve game that cut his career short. And yeah, as you say, I think he was there though, wasn't he, when we won the title in '70? He was in suit and tie.
70, yeah. He was injured. Yeah. I say the presentation ceremony after the game. Alan Ball was presented with the trophy because he was captain on the day, which was quite right. But Labby was there, and then they held it. If I remember rightly, they held it up aloft. You know, the two of them, one hand each. You know,
excellent. 1 point.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll get to see that again soon one day.
I won't.
I don't know. Like I haven't seen us win anything, which is quite a shock to me because obviously I've grown up hearing stories from the '60s and the '70s, and that we played more top flight games than any other English side, and we should be regarded as English royalty in a sense. But I don't know. Fingers crossed, as you say. I hope Carlo's got the right recipe for silverware.
Mega coup getting him. Mega coup. I mean, he probably, of all the ones going at the moment, I would say he's just about the most lauded manager in world football at the moment, who's still operating. I mean, his CV is just magnificent. But I'll tell you who's chasing him in that respect. Klopp.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. Strange. Work out. Yeah. It's almost like a Shankly Catterick situation if you think about it. One was an extrovert, almost an entertainer in his own right, and that was Shanks. So the cat was just totally the opposite. He was introverted, and I see that a little bit. I'm not saying it's quite the same, but it's similar. I mean, Klopp is larger than life. Carlo's just Don Carlo, isn't he? Takes everything in, but he's quiet compared to Klopp. It just reminds me a little bit of the 60s. But there again, I'm nostalgic guy.
No, I think that's an absolutely fantastic comparison. And what are we today? This is the 1st of July. Everton play Leicester City tonight at Goodison Park. Not tonight, actually. It's a 6 o'clock kickoff, which is
6, yes. Well,
yeah,
yes, I'm looking for that.
Which is bizarre. Again, I think that's one of the touch points that many people raise when debating Project Restart. It does feel very disjointed. But to go back to Everton, 5 or so years ago, maybe even before that, given the fact that Leicester did win the Premier League, it'd feel very strange to say Everton are the underdogs going into a home tie against Leicester City. And I was wondering from you, Elton, considering that you've seen so much of Everton Football Club over the years, where are they at as a football club? Are we declining? Are we stagnant? Or are we on the up?
I think we're on the up, but I think it's a very slow rise. But I think we're definitely on the up. I mean, Ancelotti has not done what he's achieved in his career without being a very, very shrewd, clever man. And also, as far as Mashiri is concerned, we're paying Ancelotti a fortune, so clearly there is money there, but we need to spend. I reckon we'd need to spend maybe something like 150 to 200 million to actually be able to be mentioned in the same breath as Liverpool, Man City. I think Chelsea are going to be very strong next season.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no reason why we can't aspire to the top 4. None at all. But I think the title is just a little bit. It's just a little bit out of range.
Yeah, we're in a very unique.
Quite a bit out of range.
Yeah, we're in a unique situation now, I'd say, in English football, in that we have got 2 teams that are cut and dry ahead of the rest in them lot across Stanley Park and Manchester City. Whereas, as you say, and rightly so, the bracket of teams just below, the Chelsea, Manchester United, Leicester are included in that now. Those places are very much up to grabs. With talent like Richarlison, Dominic Calvert-Lewin now, who's rarely seemed to come into form as he's getting older. As you say, you'd like to think that we could challenge for those European places.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Europa League at all. I think that is. I mean, you look at what happened to Burnley when they qualified. They hardly won a game for 6 months.
You look at what happened to us when we qualified under Ronald Koeman. That was a disaster.
I've got no time for it. I mean, who wants to go and play on a Thursday night in Outer Mongolia or something like that? I mean, never mind the clubs. I mean, I've not heard of some of the countries that are involved in it. Oh no, it's that needs. It's all UEFA money. That's all it is. That competition needs to be. It needs to be revamped totally.
In other words, there should be qualifiers with all these minnow clubs all over Europe, and then meet sort of the big boys. I don't know how. I'll have to sit down and work it out, but I just know that it holds no appeal. All this, we're playing in Europe, you know. No. You know, when you say playing in Europe, you know, you're thinking about going to Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus. You know, I can't even think of an example. Some of the clubs that are in this, no, it's ridiculous. It's great to win because you qualify for the Champions League. Now that's the tournament to be in. Both in terms of prestige and finance, that is a tournament to be in. You can somehow get in there, like finishing the top four, or win the Europa League, which are qualifier, of course. The Europa League only, I suppose, people don't get excited about it until the semi-final stage.
Yeah, as you rightly say, being in the Champions League is what opens so many doors in terms of revenue streams and commercial exposure. And I personally would like to think once the move to Bramley-Moore Dock materialises, that will be when we can crack on and really assert ourselves again as, well, getting back to our rightful place, really.
Well, crikey, I wouldn't be holding my breath about Bramley-Moore. I really wouldn't. I mean, it will happen, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Definitely.
You hit the nail on the head there in that you separate your personal interest from your professional career, but I think we both share the hopes and aspirations that we get Everton back to the places of the 60s and the 80s in particular.
Yeah, it's. I mean, but there again, people in my era, you know, miss Goodison terribly. Not the same. But it has to happen eventually. I mean, you look at the revenue, you know, places like, well, not so much Old Trafford, but the Etihad and the Emirates. You know, they've been transformed. You know, the revenue to those clubs. It's just that they spend their money very badly. You know, not the Etihad. I'm thinking more of Arsenal. Mm-hmm. I mean, their revenues on match days has almost doubled since they moved from Highbury, but they don't spend well. They don't look forward sufficiently. You know, letting players like Aaron Ramsey run out of contract. You know, it's brainless. It's just brainless.
I'm aware we're coming up to just over an hour now, and I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to someone like yourself who's had such an established career within sports broadcasting, and just to.
What it's worth, I can see myself in you all those years ago. Hungry, wanting to do it, yeah. And there's no reason why you shouldn't, my man. No reason.
I was going to say, just to sign off, any words of wisdom?
Well, keep going. That's not exactly wisdom, is it? It's so different, you know, to when I was your age. It is so different. I don't know. Local radio is a great starting point in the field of broadcasting, and it's important, as it was for me, you know, to get the right one if you can, one that's got you know, a football club that people really take notice of. I was lucky. I mean, I could have got a job on Radio Carlyle or something. You know, I'm not being disparaging, but the fact I was at Radio City and I was from the first couple of weeks of going on air, I was doing the commentaries on Liverpool for Radio City, and Liverpool was sort of just motoring into this fantastic period. I was recognised because of Liverpool, and most Evertonians thought I must have been a Liverpool fan, but that was just professionalism. You couldn't help but admire that team. It was fabulous. They were a great side. But getting to European finals, winning the league, etc. It put me on the map. Whether I was any good or not, it put me on the map. And it was kind of, the guy, Radio City, Elton Welsby, his name is. And that's how it's, my boss at Granada, he started listening because he'd been told. And he started listening. And, he rang me one day and said, I want you at Granada. But don't think you'll see a camera for 12 months. He wasn't far wrong. Yeah. But that's there's a certain amount of coincidence in that. You still got to be decent at what you do, but it would help if you managed to land one of the radio station that's got a good profile and covers one of the leading clubs, and then you've got to displace whoever's doing it. Then hopefully he moves on, and you get the chance. But as I say, it is so different now. So different. I mean, I look at, for example, Sky Sports News, or Sky Sports football coverage, which is fantastic. I mean, crikey. And the number of presenters on there, I have no idea how many there are. From Sky Sports News to all the various channels, I have not a clue how many they have. I know it must be 100, something like that. To be honest with you, there are very, very few who could have cut it back in the day. Very few. Obviously, Richard Keys is terrific, very, very good. But of course, he's out in Qatar now, having been a victim of sexism. But he's a proper presenter. I don't see too many of them. I really don't. I don't.
No, I agree with you.
Watch this, listen to what I'm saying, and think, oh, he's bitter. He's jealous or what? Not at all. Not at all. It's fact.
No, I agree 100%. What's changed is the fact that there is what I found is that back in those days, it seemed like a really prestigious achievement to be paid to be on screen talking about football. But now there are so many screens and so many people wanting to talk about football that it's quite hard to establish yourself. But as you say,
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. I think when someone said I had the best job in the country once. A journalist who wrote it in one of the papers. Best job in the country. He presents live football. There was only one, and that was me who was doing it. I would have been hard to dislodge up until '92 when Sky crashed the party. But now, oh blimey, there must be so many opportunities. I mean, I see new faces on Sky Sports News, which is a great place to start. But I see new faces on there. It seems to be every day. I've not seen him before. I've not seen her before. So if you've got if you're any good, I think there's a chance you get on their radar. I think I would think it's kind of easier to get a head start now than it was, back in the 80s, early 80s. But there again, you see, I'm also, I've got no substance to what I'm saying. That's just an opinion. I could be wrong.
Okay, 100%. I'll take heed of your words, and fingers crossed I can get back to you in a couple of years' time with an established position. Be nice.
That would be great. I look forward to that.
Me too. Elton, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk, and you're welcome to come on the podcast whenever you like in the future.
All you got to do is invite me and I'll be there.
Pleasure. Take care.
And you, Max.
Bye.